listen there tonight. Still listening. All right, thanks. Okay, good to see everybody here. Hopefully tonight I'll be able to give you a little insight about some things that we've all been hearing, how exercise is really, really good for us. We've been told now for years that exercise is good for us. Well, we're going to take a look at that. And I'm going to bring out a couple of points that are going to be very, very obvious. And it's going to be so right there, you're going to wonder how you missed it. And I know I did. Let me put it this way. I have literally, for years, thought that exercise when I was younger was good for me. We all bought into it. We all thought it was good. I was very fortunate in the fact that I had a view that other people didn't. The view that I was more fortunate to have was the fact that I saw what nutrition did from a very early age when I lived on a farm. Having had a father that was an old-time farmer, old world farmer, he, growing up under his dad, who was from Germany, they knew that the herbs are what they cured all the animals' problems with. They just went to the field. They obviously through time had seen animals cure themselves with things or eat certain things at certain times. So he literally had a battery or a supply of different types of remedies for different types of problems that these animals had. And from that, I've always known that nutrition brought about a very healthier response. But I was caught up like everybody else. Like a lot of people here are probably going to feel that they were caught up also after tonight. And that is that exercise is good for you. When in reality, I'm going to show you that exercise is a lot more stress than you'd ever believe. One of the things that I want to really make you aware of is that when people are selling you an exercise program, they're usually being fraudulent in what they're offering you. If you knew what to look for, you could see that it was fraud right up front. A total misrepresentation. And we'll get into these points. One of the really big things that I want people to think about tonight is this. Let's just cut right to the point on one thing. Muscle. When we go to get in shape, when we think about exercise, when we think about getting fit, it's all about muscle. And it is either the heart muscle, cardiovascular strength, or it is the skeletal muscles. These muscles on the body are important to affect everything that we do in as far as movement goes, as far as health goes. Cardiovascular strength, or the stronger your heart is, the more cardiovascular endurance you have. And the more muscular strength you have, they say the more fit you are. And you need to understand that a muscle has only one thing that it can do, and that is get stronger or weaker. Stronger or weaker. That's all that it can do. And before I'm done tonight, I think you all are going to find out that you've already had the answers. The only thing I'm going to do is knock the dust off, hopefully, and help you to get there. Exercise, if you want to look at exercise as any one particular thing, instead of the benefit to you, you should look at it as the trigger, as the button that you push to make things happen. It's the trigger. If it were a gun, it would be the gunpowder, not the bullet, the gunpowder. The bullet is what gets the job done. It's the gunpowder that propels it. It's the gunpowder that pushes the bullet to do the job. And when it comes to exercise, the real result comes from the nutrition that we take in and the body's ability to process that nutrition, and then the body's ability to respond. So I have a little question here tonight. I want to ask somebody here if they can give me an answer. Which causes which? Do flies cause garbage, or does garbage cause flies? Who wants to volunteer an answer? Nobody wants to put their hand up. Yes?
Flies.
Flies do cause flies. That is right on the money. Flies cause flies. Now, has anybody ever watched the Animal Channel? They had a special on the other night about different types of birds migrating. And they had this thing about ducks and geese. And when these birds, even though they're different types, they migrate, they fly in a very specific V formation, and one side of that V is always longer than the other. Does anyone know why one side of that V is longer? You're a hunter, do you know, Cal?
So the leader goes back to rest.
No, because there's more ducks on that side. It's okay, Cal, I know why you don't get any ducks. Okay, now.
I don't hunt birds.
But you know, here it is. We all have a perception, and I'm not making any fun of you, Cal. I brought it up for a reason. And it's the same thing with exercise. You know, a lot of us think that exercise is going to bring us a result. Man, let me tell you, when I was younger, I thought, yeah. I look at those guys that push that weight around, and I said, oh man, those weightlifters, that's the kind of exercise for me. That makes big, strong muscles. And man, nobody pushed those weights harder than I did. In fact, I was so obsessive and compulsive about it that I pushed those weights more sets, harder, heavier, and then one day, I was just about wore out after several months. This old-timer at Jim looked at me and he kind of gave me that nudge, you know, the kind of a look that you know that you don't want to hear what this guy's about to say because he's going to just kill you with what he's going to say. Your ego is just going to take such a battering in one short sentence. And he said, you ever try feeding all that work you do? What do you mean? Of course I eat. He said, you know, he said, as much as you're working out, nobody can eat that much. And I started thinking, whoa, if I'm pushing my body that much, man, I must have to eat more. I've got to get more food out of that. I've got to take that program and I've got to feed all that extra exercise. So I started thinking about it. If I stress my body how much food do I have to have? Well, there's equations for that. And what I want to talk to you about is that perception right there. How many people here have thought or done at one time an exercise program where they did more and more and more to try and get more result? Hold your hand up. Oh, you did more and more to get more and more result. Did anybody here, while they were doing this exercise program, where they were doing more and more work, did you ever miss a day and then you go into the gym and found that you were stronger? Did anybody find that? Almost without exception? Did you get more stress of exercise? Or did you get more recovery? You bet. And herein lies the problem. I want you to just think about this flies and this garbage thing. I want you to think about people say that more exercise is better for you. If more exercise were better, marathon runners would look like bodybuilders. And if you went into the gym and you were doing exercises and you were told to do resistance training, and by the way, it's not called weight lifting. It might be by some. It's really called weight throwing and dropping if you're really watching. Or it's called kinetic energy unlimited because it's thrown and it's dropped and it's thrown. But neither here nor there. You'll watch them do several sets of an exercise. And why do they do 2 or 3 sets? Anybody want to tell me why they did 2 or 3 sets of an exercise? Give me any reason. How about they said so? I'd like to meet they, the real they though. Because they have said a lot of things. They say do 3 sets of 10. Well, if 3 sets are good, why don't you do 30? And if 3 are good, 30 are better, right? And if 30 is better, why don't we just stay in the gym all day like I did? Let me tell you a story. I was so gung-ho, I looked up everything. I looked up everything I could get my hands on, every routine that everybody had ever done. I read more books, and I'm dyslexic, so it took me a long time to read these books, and I struggled through them, but I was obsessed. I was going to find out. Day and night, I had my face in books. And I read these books, and I read, and I read, and I read. And I wanted to know where are the answers for the amount of sets and reps? And I came upon a routine that said, if you will do a set of bicep curls to failure, and a set of tricep extensions to failure, till you can't do another one, every half hour, around the clock, for 24 hours, your arms will be 1 inch bigger the next day. I thought, I'm going to try this. So I set the old clock. No, this is for real. I mean, you know, hey, I was obsessed. I wanted to get results. I wanted to get there. I wanted to make a difference in my physique. I did this routine. And at the end of 24 hours, guess what? My arms were over 1 inch bigger, almost 1.25 inches. And for 4 days, I couldn't even move my arms. But they were bigger. Okay. I mean, they hurt so bad, don't even get near me. I mean, you know, I stayed at home and literally sat in a chair with tears running out of my eyes and didn't want anybody to even come close to me, even the cat. I mean, I couldn't, it was so painful, I couldn't believe it. Now, I had gained that inch. They were right. The advertisement was right. It worked. But was it sustainable? Better yet, was it healthful? What had I done to my system? Well, first of all, what got me? Emotion. And then what got me? Ego. I'm going to do it. I can do it. Now, how many people here have thought that this type of exercise routine did something for someone, so I'm going to go do that? Then they said, I saw this diet do this for so-and-so, I'm going to go do that. Absolutely. But did you ever stop to think why it worked? How did it work? Is it sustainable? We're always associating a person's action with the end result. Weightlifting is not a better way to build muscles. It is a more efficient way. Resistance training can be a more efficient way. It can be, as we say, a better trigger, a more effective tool. Everything is going to work with the body according to how the body's system dictates things to be done. You cannot work outside of this. You may see short-term physical improvements. You may see short-term dramatic improvements. But you may be causing long-term debilitating effects internally. You see, we can only see the outside of the body. We measure the outside of the body. But how many people here have ever bothered to try and find measurements that come from within the body? And this is the thing we need to look at. You know, if someone sells us something and we go down the road and we buy it, we want that same result. But how many people here have tried things and gotten a different result? Okay? Why? Because you are physiologically slightly different. Now let me explain this. Different in only certain ways. Myself at my age now, my body doesn't work as quickly or as effectively as I'd have liked it to when it was 20 years younger. But I'm still doing really good compared to most people my age. Why? Because I have this ability to take working knowledge and work with it. But you know, each person's eyes see for the same basic reasons. Each person's liver functions for the same basic reasons. Everybody's muscles function for the same basic reasons. The problem is, everybody's system absorbs food a little differently. Maybe a little faster, a little slower. Maybe age is a part of this. Maybe the food that we've eaten. They talk today about things being genetic. Don't buy that garbage. Do not buy this garbage of genetic problems. Oh, it may be that cholesterol in your family tree is familial. It may be sent down to you from your grandfather. This may be a very slight characteristic truth. However, it is more social, economic,
and familial or family eating styles that have been handed down. You know, we tend to eat like our mother taught us to eat. We tend to teach our children to eat like we've eaten. Our grandfather kind of taught our parents how to eat. We keep certain traits, and those certain traits build up tastes within us. And so we tend to follow down these same characteristic type trails. It's like a plant. If a plant is always growing in the desert, and if you leave it in the same area, it'll tend to grow the same way. Now, if you give it a little more sun, or a little more water, it may vary a little bit. A family starts out eating a certain way. They teach the next generation to eat a certain way. Each generation, someone might have certain parts of their body that have been stressed. When your body has been stressed, you have a weakness there. You have a dis-ease and unrest at the cellular level. When you have that unrest, you need to feed that back up, or you need to take care of that. You need to remedy that. If you do not, and at that time you were to pass on to a child, you were to have a child, you were to pass on the sperm or the egg, and it were to form another human being, there would be a weakness in the DNA there being not turned on or off. Remember in 2003, the New York Times put out an article about genes and how they can affect people. And they said that it's turning that DNA on and off can change the coloration of the hair, the bone structure, the way a person digests their food. It's not necessarily genetic as it is a familial trait or habit. So you really want to stop and think about what is being said and done. Let's take a look at our body and just see what really happens with what goes on. You know, when we talk about exercise, it's exert-size. Think about that. Exert-size. You have to exert. Exercise is defined as an activity to develop. It's defined as to develop or help with the understanding of a skill, a task, an effort, a problem, trying to lift that weight, trying to push that resistance, trying to spin that bike, an effort. It is an exertion, exercise. Let's talk about recreation, recreation. Recreation is defined as to refresh or refreshment of the mind and the body. It's like a play and it amuses. When you go to exercise, do you really want results? I want to ask the people here today, how many of you here want to exercise for an end result, not just for fun? Hold your hand. Okay, you want an effect. Okay, if you want an effect, you're going to have to cause it. You're going to have certain facts, and you're going to have to put out an exertion, and you're going to have to trigger that response in the body to bring it about. If you're going to do this, and it's going to take an exertion, there's something that's going to come up right away. If I tell anyone here, I'm going to help you today to change your body, but you're going to have to work out. What immediately kind of a feeling do you get? Anybody want to share with me what really happens in your mind when I say, no, you're going to have to really work out? Anybody want to share what the feeling is inside?
Run away.
Run away, right, okay, good. A lot of us want that end effect, let's be real. But when it comes, and I really appreciate that, thank you. Because we want to do it, but we right away want to control how we do it. How many felt that? That if somebody says they're going to push you, you want to have a little control on how they're going to push you. Well, if what you thought worked, you wouldn't be in the shape you're in. That's one of my quotes. If what you thought worked, you wouldn't be in the shape you're in. And you shouldn't listen to what somebody else thinks either. And you shouldn't listen to what they say. What I'm going to give you tonight are the facts, and they're going to be so simple and so to the point. It's just like what I'm showing you now. emotion takes over. It wants to control, and the ego says, well, if I'm gonna have to work out now, let me know what I'm gonna have to do, and I wanna try to, okay. So we have all these exercise programs. Now we've got all these exercise programs, so here comes the pitch, you ready? In only 40 minutes, in this class, 5 days a week, you can have abs that look like this. Please. To get your abs to show through, you have to remove this blanket of things called fat on the top. That is diet. And in 2 bad meals a week, 2 bad meals a week, you can blow all your good effects from dieting properly, for a whole week. 2 meals. And if you think that getting that fat off is a calorie count, well, that's another discussion we'll have to get into. Because just calorie counting won't work either, because you'll probably lose muscle with it. So you want to control it, and that pitch comes, and they say, look, do this type of Tai-Bo. Let's do this type of aerobic. Let's do this step class. Now, we all go out and we try a different class. How many people here have gone from one exercise program to another because they weren't getting the result they wanted? Raise your hand. Okay, we've got quite a few people. And herein lies the problem. How did you know what you were looking for? How did you know? I'll tell you what it was. Your heart was in the right place. You desired to get some results. And I understand that. The reason I'm standing here tonight talking to you the way I am is because when I was a young boy, shorter than I am now, okay, literally I went out and sought every exercise program I could to see who got the best results. And I was trying to find out what seemed to work. And it kept coming back to me that the strongest muscles were with weightlifting. I knew there was something there. But I also realized I had to eat a whole lot more than I ever thought. And by the way, when I tried to feed those muscles that were working so hard, I got bigger than a house. Half of it was fat. Because what I was doing, I was stressing my body so hard, and I was eating too many calories at each sitting, and it was the wrong foods, and one of them was mainly carbohydrates because I needed all the energy, they said, and I was getting as fat as I was strong. So what I ended up doing was looking like the Michelin Man. And trust me, at my height, it looked more like a cue ball, okay? So I understand the problems that have gone on here, and this is why I want you to all stop and think about this. You know, when they start with that sales pitch, you need to be able to have the ammunition to ask the questions so that you don't get taken again. There's so many programs out there because people act out of emotion and out of ego, and they trust before they question. Remember, you can have short-term physical improvements that you see on the outside because your body has to respond. But then you can be doing long-term debilitating problems on the inside. We have a lady here tonight that came and talked to me. She said that I could mention it. She still feel comfortable with that? Thank you very much, Renee. I'll get your name right this time. Renee came to me, and Renee has really worked at exercise. And I had seen her before in Helcom. I've seen her other places here in town. Renee came in here, she had seen my website, and she wanted to know about results. Renee has been to many other health clubs and many other, quote, personal strainers, pocket drainers. And when they lie to you, it's more like they're an entertainer. It's not funny. This lady has been so debilitated that she has had to be on an IV every couple of weeks of nutrients to try and get her body back working. True or not true, Renee? And she sat down and she talked to me for, what, a couple hours the other day? And she said, and I asked her, have you ever heard that before? And she said, no, I'd never heard anybody say that exercise was a stress. She said, I would do kickboxing for an hour. I'd do aerobics. I would do all these things, and I would try to eat the best that I could. And by her dieting that I checked, she was doing quite well. But with the effort that she would put out and the intensity, she was overdoing it. Most people To quote the greatest man there ever was in my book in exercise, Arthur Jones, who invented the Nautilus, I had the extreme pleasure of working with his right-hand associate, Jim Flanagan, and was an understudy to him, of types. Jim taught me, and Arthur taught me, one very simple truth that just stands out. Most people work out way too much, way too often, and not near hard enough. Arthur Jones used to say, if you work out real hard, you won't work out real long. And he used to say, you know, hard work produces results. Everything else just produces work. And I want you to think right now about that weightlifter. He does hard work, and he could do it a lot briefer. I used to tell everyone when I was into bodybuilding, and I've won quite a few titles, and I did it on 20 minutes, 3 days a week. I used to tell people if the average bodybuilder's IQ was 2 points higher, they may be a plant. Because I had tried to tell all my friends how I was getting the result, and they would not believe me, and they would watch me work out. They go, we know you go home and work out some more. You do that just for show. Please. I mean, I would literally leave myself on the floor. You know, most people will take you're trying to help them in the exercise field as you're telling them they're wrong, more than allow you to help them. Renee was in here talking to me when a trainer who had been in another club where she had been working out, correct? Trying to learn from me, correct? Because he said, I want to know how you get these amazing results and these letters on your wall. I want that. Opening his mind. And after he tried the first workout with me, he made 2 exercises and had to quit. 4 minutes, and he had to quit. And this fellow said he was in shape. The next time, he was able to make 5 exercises a couple of days later. And he said he was so sore he couldn't walk around properly. Now, this is because he had been working out a lot, not hard. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be worked to that degree, but you need to understand what it takes to do it. So let's look at that stress we're going to put on our body. First of all, I want to remind you about a few points that you need to consider. Does your body do any exercise on a daily basis? Let's look at what we need to do just first of all so that we know that we are going to be healthful. Okay? Can we just sustain our health? We grow 79 inches, almost 80 inches of fingernails a year. Our body grows 27.5 feet of whiskers if you're a man. You grow 40 feet 7 inches of hair. How about this one? 889 suits of skin. 889 layers of skin. That's 1 every 28 days. Now let's look at exercise for the body. Not just what it's trying to grow. Just to sustain health. It pumps 55 million gallons. 55 million gallons of blood. It breathes 551 million times. And the heart beats or contracts, that one muscle contracts 2,756,000,000 times. And processes 109,000 pounds of food through the system. I want to ask you, is that a workout already? So if your body does that, you're going to add exercise to it. If you're going to add exercise to it, you're going to add stress to a body that's usually already out of stress. And imagine if it was proper exercise. We haven't even talked about proper exercise yet. We've only talked about improper exercise. So when you go to your health club, you might want to do like I do. I kind of call them a stealth club because your results seem to disappear or never appear. And your personal trainer is literally a personal strainer. If you haven't gone to a health club or you haven't gone to an exercise program that's considering your recovery, and it's not talking to you about how you're going to recover, what is it really doing for you other than adding another stress to usually an already out of balance body? If you weren't feeling well when you went there, what was wrong with your diet already? Did they address it? I want to bring up a very good point here. Renee went to a naturopathic doctor. Please don't anyone ask her who she went to. I'm asking you not to do that. But this person is giving her the IV drip and helping her, but never fully adjusted her diet nor put her on supplements, correct?
Yeah, just put them on a couple supplements.
But not a full battery amount, no. And how many people here have seen me, the first thing I do is put you on a battery of supplements to ensure that we're getting all the bases covered? Now here sits several people. Cal, his wife, he's been benefited and never came on the program. Heart produced, pumped more blood, more efficiently
10%.
lost weight. Pardon me?
10% increase.
10% increase in heart volume and never even came on the program, just did the supplements and ate along the guidelines.
And exercise.
And did your normal exercise.
Yeah.
With what you were doing. So it increased your recovery right there. So that's a proof right there to Cal. And his wife being helped with her hepatitis C by a 73% viral load reduction. Jamie's office manager had a skin problem that in 4 weeks went away, basically, didn't it, Jim? She had been through the grand rounds at a hospital here in town, and they were unable to help her strictly with what, Jamie? Diet and nutrition, correct? Supplements. This is the point. If someone is going to help you get fit, how can they use the word fit? How can they use the word health if they're adding stress to an already out of balance body and have added nothing to it? I happen to work with one of the attorneys who works on the fen-phen diet problem that had all the heart pumps, Jerry Alexander. And I asked Jerry, I said, Jerry, isn't that technically gross negligence? He said, Bert, if that person has a pre-existing condition, prior to going to the health club or their trainer, he said, yes, they've worsened that individual. And in all essences, that is negligence. He said, if they didn't take a history on that person, he said, to a degree, that is gross negligence. I've been in the health field now over 30 years doing what I do. I never, ever, from the day I started, would even think about working with someone till I knew what their history was and found out how they were eating. I knew, because of those animals on the farm, that nutrition caused health. And after that man in the gym beating me up over exercise before I ever got started with other people, I realized that I had to feed that exercise that I was doing because I went nowhere with it. And until I could prove things with myself, I didn't attempt to do them with others. So let's start thinking about logically, do we have the materials on board? Do we have the time and the rest? Because here is the most important point. When you go to exercise, should you have eaten that food already and should it be ready to respond, or are you going to eat afterward? Well, when you shave, whether it's your legs for the ladies or your face for the men, and you cut yourself, you should have eaten that food prior to the stress of exercise to bring it forth. So there are three major considerations that I want to talk about. And the first one is this. If you're going to do it, let's do it right and not overstress. So let's take the average person. Any one person who went to that first spot of thinking about, I'm going to change my body, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to get healthy. What do I do? Well, first of all, you know you're out of balance. So if you start an exercise program there, as most people are doing, you're -1. You're minus the nutritional help and getting that straightened out. So let's just start there, -1. So now you've got some type of dis-ease, unrest at the cellular level, dis-ease. You don't want that to manifest into sickness. So that means that you are under-energized, or you're not vital, you're not feeling your best, you're not vital, you don't have vitality. You don't have the accurate, actual nutrients that you need to cause these things to get better. You need more adequate, possibly, amounts of those vitamins, and you need them more often at the time that you need them. Your belief system does not help you here. You can believe this is going to work for you, But you've got to use your logic. You've got to realize that you've received fractionated information, and now you receive whole information. And that you've got improper application. They're putting the stress first. So what you really need is a person with working knowledge. Working knowledge. Do you need someone who's certified or someone who's verified? Verified. Find a person who has results across the board at any age, any lifestyle. And so you got to remember, you're starting now already -1. Now you go in and you start doing the exercise. You start stressing the muscles. So it requires more energy to put this extra effort out. Okay? That's -2. Now you're spending extra energy. Now let's say you start to perform it and it stresses. You actually go hard enough or long enough to stress these tissues and muscles. Now you're -3. So you've spent more energy, you were out of balance, and now you're stressing tissues. Now you're at -3. Now you step up and you start to really push yourself and you start doing it on a regular basis. And you've cut the food back a little to cut your calories. Now you've stressed yourself to level 4. Now you've got inadequate nutrients compared to what you already had, trying to lose the fat, trying to stress the muscle to make it grow on not enough. And you already weren't feeling vital. I wonder why you start to feel energized at first and feel a little bit of stress and a little bit of soreness and feel good, but then you start to run out of energy. How many people here found in 3 or 4 weeks into most programs, they hit such a dive they find it hard to keep going? Okay? Most people quit health clubs in the 3rd to 4th week, the 6th to 7th week, and the 11th to 13th week. There are critical cycles that happen with the body. So let's talk about one more. Let's say we go in, we spend that extra energy, we stress the muscles and tissue, we cut down on the amount of calories, and let's say we start to try to eat more food, but we don't have the right types. Now we've added another stress to the digestive system. We're possibly not giving the body enough time between the exercises and all these other stresses. You're up to a stress level of 4 to 5 right now. Times where you started. I wonder why Renee ran out of health. Because she didn't deal with a professional. She dealt with someone who was wanting to be. They might have meant very well. A lot of people, don't get me wrong, they mean well. But fraud is fraud. You know, in anything that has to do with health, there's a simple motto: do no harm. First, do no harm. In the Marine Corps, we used to talk about prior proper planning prevents poor performance. They added some other cliches in there, but we won't go there. But proper prior planning prevents poor performance. We've got to plan prior. You want to pre-event this. You want to prevent your health problem. An example. If I start to scratch my hand with my fingernail, and I do it just a little bit harder every day in one spot, I'll develop a callus. The body has time to respond to that slight irritation, similar to resistance training with weights or any type of exercise that's cardiovascular. If this happens, and I do it too hard, too fast, what do I end up with here? A blister. Oh, now let's pick the blister. How long does it take to heal just one blister on your hand? Pull the skin off one blister. How long does it take to heal? Imagine doing that to the whole inside of your musculature in your heart. We're at -4 or 5 without even pushing it all that much more. I wonder why so many people start an exercise program and quit. So let's think about something. It's our health score. When we talk about exercise and getting fit, we're talking about our health score. Your health and your performance are the same thing. It's no different to take a sick person and help them get well than it is an average athlete and move them to another level. It's all about a performance level. It's all about a state of health. So we're going to talk about exercise and the correctness of exercise. Exercise and the correctness of exercise. Now, what is correct exercise? I'm gonna go through this little part right now, and I want you to try and follow along with me, because I'm gonna really lay out some critical things here about proper exercise. First, what can a muscle do? It can only get stronger or weaker. Nothing else is possible. It is like a small container, a bag, if you will, a baggie, filled with fibers, attached at each end with a small piece of tendon. A muscle can only contract, meaning that if this were my arm were out like this and I wanted to bring my arm to my head, my bicep contracts or pulls tight like this, and that pulls my arm up. To get this arm to go back out in this position, I would have to contract the lower muscle here, the tricep, and contract it to extend it back out. However, if I were standing at you with my left side to you, and I were to bring my left arm up from down at my side, as it comes up, it gets heavier and heavier and heavier until it's right here at the moment arm factor, or at 3 o'clock. Between 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock, when my arm is at 3 or at 9, depending on the point I'm at, that is the greatest point of resistance, because it gets closer from there on up to the top, and it gets closer to the bottom where it's a free hang at the bottom. So as my muscle comes up, it contracts to bring it up. Now once I've contracted it up, once I've brought it up, here's the neat thing. I can take 40% more weight, approximately, right there at the top, once I've made the contraction. Once that muscle's tightened up, I can take 40% more weight and put it on the muscle and lower it under control, resisting it. Not letting it push me, but just actually control it down. So I am 40% more efficient releasing the weight or lowering the weight than I'm raising it. But yet you will see people in the health club dropping that weight and slamming it up, when you should be lowering it down, more importantly, at twice the speed down, half the speed down, or twice as long. In other words, if I contract that muscle coming up for 2 seconds, I should take 4 seconds lowering it. But when I'm lowering it, I don't want to let the weight push me down. I want to have that muscle turned on against it, slightly having a tug of war, ever so slightly losing on the way down. So a muscle can only contract and it can only get stronger or weaker. That's it. Now, with your heart, when it contracts and it pumps the blood, the less beats it takes to pump your blood in a minute. In other words, if your heart beats 60 beats a minute, it has a certain efficiency rating or a certain strength level. But if you can get your heart stronger from working with it cardiovascularly, you can literally get that heart rate to go down to 50 beats a minute. It is stronger because it's getting the body oxygenated with the same amount of blood in only 50 beats where it used to take 60 beats. So that's one of the most important things. So when you contract your muscle, if I'm going to do this exercise where I'm going to bring my arm up from my side and curl the weight up to my chest, I need to do 4 contractions minimum in a period of 40 to 70 seconds to stimulate my muscle to change. But it must reach a point where it can't do another rep easily. I've got to really fight with it. In other words, I need to exceed the body's ability to work right there or momentarily fail, where I can't possibly, no matter how hard I try, get it up to the top and then lower it slowly. If you can do 4 to 12 repetitions, 2 seconds contracting, 4 seconds lowering, in a period of 40 to 70 seconds, you'll stimulate that muscle for change. And any other kind of exercise is a modification thereof to be less effective, more durational, takes more time, and less benefit. The harder you push that muscle, the less chance there is of injury, because after you've done 8 repetitions, it's harder to do the 9th and 10th because you're pre-exhausted. And it feels bad because the blood is rushing in there, but you can't get hurt because it can't produce as much power. So one set, done to a point of momentary failure, stimulates the muscle to change. Your heart takes 10 to 12 minutes of working at a certain level to change. So all these extra exercises are not necessary. Now, the next thing is that you want that exercise to be as full a range of movement as possible. You want that exercise to move the limb as far as it possibly can. An example, if I were to hold my hands here right against my shoulders and push my hands up over my head, watch my upper arm bone. The upper arm bone, right here on the upper arm. Watch how far it moves. It's moving a certain distance. But if I were to do the macho thing and reach out here and do a wide grip, which they say builds wider shoulders, which is absolutely wrong, and I move it down and up, look how much less the range of movement is. So, 10% less in a range of movement can mean up to 30 or 40% of the muscle not even worked. So, you need a good range of movement. You need so many contractions in a certain period of time, push to a point where you can't get another repetition in good form. And that's it. And the muscle will change if you have the reserves. And everything else is a cell job, because it can only get stronger or weaker. That's it. Now, there are several types of work. There is the stimulative type work where you push the weight, like I just said, to a point where you cannot get another repetition in good form. And it's under control, so there's no chance of injury, there's no inertia. And then you can have change in the muscle. So that's stimulative type work. Then there's the type where you can go in and you can do the class for 45 minutes. And you have what's called durational work, or laborious work, durational, where you're working for a period of time. Now, if you work long enough, the muscle will get tired and you'll get some benefit, but only very minimal. And it takes a long period of time pushing this class again and again. And yet, all the repetitions that were done and all the time you spent still cost your body to repair it, as happened with Renee. So now, there's another type of work. It's called maintenance type work. Work where you do a set amount of the same stimulative type work you do, but to a much lesser level where it keeps your muscle where it is and doesn't allow it to go back from that state. You can reach a state of performance where you can hold it. And this is a nice place to be. Get yourself where you want to be, and you can hold it. And one other point, so you might understand this. Although you might produce more and more muscle on your body, and the ladies, we're going to get into a couple of things here. Tissue. Women always worry about, I'm going to get large muscularly. No, ladies, estrogen does not allow that. Your muscle gets denser to the center of the cell, where a man's, because of testosterone, gets larger to the outside of the cell, or hypertrophies. But not every male will get as large as other males, because there are different blends of tissues. You have the type of tissue as the American native who's built slimmer and not as bulky and is a great distance runner. He has what's called oxidative tissue, or tissue that's made for endurance, repetition, repetition, repetition. And then some people are built for glycolytic tissue, which is power type. I'm more of a power type. I'm a chunkier build. I'm more bulky. Now, there's also nerve response that's got to be added to that, and so on. But when it comes to tissue type, you're either more oxidative or more glycolytic. But when it comes to ladies, you don't get larger. You get denser. And if you say, so hear someone say, oh, well, every time I lift, I get bulky. Well, they do have a problem there. It's called the mouth. What goes into the mouth is not proper. Okay? They're not regulating the fuel and the repair tissues. So they're driving the blood sugar level down from creating more muscle and not feeding the body properly, driving it into a survival mode or a storage type mode, storing what it does take in. We have people here, like we were just having a talk, Jamie and I were today, about, she said, I cannot believe how when I do not eat on time, the next day I have not dropped any weight. And yet when she eats on time and eats all the food, she drops weight, because her blood sugar levels were met with the need that they had prior to them getting too low, correct? And even though she eats again later on, the body stores it and it puts it on. Right or wrong, Jamie?
Right.
Have you tested this? Do you know that you know?
Yeah.
You absolutely do. Dorothy, do you know? Dorothy can tell you this for sure. By the way, you know, when we talked about pushing ourselves, there's a point I'm going to go into about that, so you understand about motivation and pushing and are you reaching the right point. But I want to cover one other point, and then we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back. And that is strength and endurance. How many people here have wanted to train for strength? Put your hand up. Okay, now how many here have wanted to train more for endurance? Put your hand up. Okay, there's no difference. And anybody who teaches you so is a fraud and is ill-informed and is doing a sales job. And I'm going to prove it to you with some self-evident truth right now. Let's take any individual. Never compare yourself with anybody else because everybody's neurological function is different and every tissue is different. Let's take a look at this. Let's say that we wanted to train for strength or endurance. Okay, I take Robin, for example. Robin, today, we've got Robin on the leg press, and he can leg press with timed repetitions, 200 pounds for 20 reps at exactly a certain speed. 200 pounds for 20. In 2 months, Robin got to where he's doing 400 pounds for 20 at the same time. Now we have Robin at 2 different levels of strength. 200 for 20, 400 for 20. Let's take only 100 pounds. When could Robin do more repetitions with 100 pounds at the 200 pound max level or the 400? Anybody want to offer an answer?
400.
Obviously at the 400. Why? It's only 1/4 of 400 where it's half of 200. So Robin's strength is Robin's endurance. Just like the lower Robin's heart rate is, the more cardiovascular endurance he has. So when people tell you they're training you for strength or endurance, better get out of there or you better start thinking. Strength or endurance? And are they having me do all these sets for what? So they have you do 3 sets of 10. 10 repetitions, you're working within your momentary existing state of ability. Why should your body change? Until you change that, until you push that limit. And it's in your perceived limits. My job as a coach, first and foremost, do no harm. And my primary job above all else, if I know my field, is to help a client to exceed their limited beliefs. To help my client exceed their limited beliefs and their performance on where they can go. I've got to coach you through to that next level and help you to get there and see that you can do more. And through that, you will get stronger. If you never try to make an effort, you'll never have the stimulus to make that happen. And let me give you one example. There was an Aztec prince, or king. This is based on a true story from what I've been told. And he had 3,000 workers that were going to build a monument on the top of a ridge. And he said, I want these foundation stones moved by these warriors to the top of that ridge today. They took the 3,000 workers out, they hooked them to the ropes, and they started up the hill with the stones. And they got halfway. And they came back down. And the chief called all the men out, and all of his senior warriors, and he said, what happened? And they said, Chief, we failed. He said, line the men in 2 ranks facing each other, and I want all the men with their backs to the sun facing the men kneeling, facing them. And I want them to slay the man across from them. And he killed 1,500 of the men right there on the spot. And he turned to the senior warriors and he said, now, tomorrow, take my stones to the top of the ridge. The next day, the stones went 3/4 of the way up the mountain. And they failed. And they came back down. The next day, the chief said, bring the men out again. split them in two ranks and said, face each other. Had one side bow down, and had the other men slay the other half of the half. Now they had 1/4 of the men they had originally. And guess what happened to the stones that day? They went to the top of the mountain. When you go into the gym and you're going to work out the way I have just taught you, you're going to move your repetitions under control. You're going to lower slowly. You're going to feel the blood gorge into the muscle. You're going to feel the need for oxygen. You're going to start to be exhausted. Can you do as much on the 10th rep as you could on the 3rd? No. But do you feel worse? Yes. Can you get hurt? No. As long as you stay in good form, you can't even put out enough power to get hurt. But it hurts. It's putting your mind in charge of your body instead of having your body in charge of your mind. This is where most of us do not get in shape. We have a limited belief. We are not helped to go there. You shouldn't be pushed there, definitely correctly, if you do not have the proper backup or the proper recovery ready to go prior to the stimulus of exercise or the stress. Let's grab a drink. We'll get going here in 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
I think Irish whiskey.
Okay, one of the things I want to talk about, I want to go over that point about how the body stimulates us again and makes it happen. First of all, you have to have so many contractions within the muscle, 4 to 12 or even a few more, that range in 2 seconds on the positive contraction or the eccentric, 4 seconds on the eccentric lowering, concentric 2, eccentric 4, somewhere between 40 and 70 seconds is ideal. And that's because of the cardiovascular capacity to have the right amount of oxygen and to work that muscle to a point of muscular failure rather than oxygen deficit. You want to stimulate the muscle. When the muscle is stimulated to that point and is pushed to a point where you're trying to exceed with that, or succeed with that repetition, but cannot, and are really pushing it, then there's a chemical response that causes that muscle to change, provided your body has the ability to supply those needs to change it. So you've actually stressed the muscle, you've triggered it to cause this change. Now, strength is the only thing that muscle can do, is to get stronger or weaker. How do you know when you've done too much or too little exercise? You can tell by your resting heart rate. When your resting heart rate has been elevated the day after exercise, it shows that you've stimulated your body for change. The heart rate is continually higher until the body comes under a state of balance or is repaired. The heart will always be the last muscle to recover. Always the last muscle to recover. And so many people mistakenly go ahead and exercise again when that heart rate returns to the lowest that it has been, and never allow it to see if it goes even lower. Most people, you should wait until that heart rate goes to the lowest level and then allow it another 24 to 48 hours. Why would you want to do this? Because you've reached a point called stasis or balance, but you've not allowed any time to build up more internal reserves. Although you may get more muscle, with women denser muscle, with men stronger muscle, larger muscle, does not mean your body's internal organs have the ability to keep up. They do not get larger. Therefore, you need to learn how to maintain the muscle you've had while allowing the internal reserves to build up. This is where you will only find this with working knowledge. Many coaches have the theories, but don't have the working knowledge. What I have done differently is that most of my life I have studied how to cause the body to recover at the fastest possible rate. I've studied recovery and stress, not exercise
and possibilities with food. I was very fortunate, like I said, to be trained with people who knew from the Nautilus Center. But as much as they taught me about the intensity of exercise, I saw that there was an absolute proportional and disproportional need for repair. And I've always seen that repair is the most important factor. Yes, Jane?
How would you define muscle failure? Because isn't it real close to pain?
Muscle failure is a type of pain. Is it real close to pain? If there isn't pain involved, you're probably not there. Very good.
Okay.
This is the reason so many exercise programs are picked, because it's not too much pain. But a muscle is either stimulated for change or it's not. Many people that have worked with me have found that they can learn to take greater and greater levels of pain, yet have never been injured. Richard's experienced this to a very high level. Robin and I have seen me train a lot of people. Jamie, you've seen me train. Dorothy's seen me. I've pushed people to the point where most people have thought this is it. Not that it is advisable, but I have done it to the point of really where your body starts to literally fail to maintain control in all areas. Your body will shut down if you're training properly before you can injure yourself, provided you're in good health. But this is where a person who is working with you needs to know limits, heart rate levels, exertion levels. There are things about speed and timing of exercise. Time can be a big factor in exercise. Just by cutting down the time between exercises, it increases intensity. You don't necessarily have to use more weight. You could use the same weight for more repetitions in the same time. Or you could use more weight with more repetitions in the same time. Or you could use more weight with more repetitions in less time. And then you could change the order of the exercises. It is infinite. This is why I'm able to take people for years and never give them the same routine twice. But here's the thing I want to tell you, that I want you to walk away from here with tonight. That a muscle has a certain amount of requirements to be stimulated. And more than 1 or 2 sets is absolute abuse or stress. After the point of stimulus, it is abuse. It is wear and tear, stress to your body. You can do it to a point where 10 to 12 minutes of weight training is all that's needed. And literally, 10 to 12 minutes of cardio is all that's needed. And then you've got the muscle to work and burn fat and to require maintenance for the next 24 hours. Richard can tell you that we've got it down to 3 exercises for your whole body. And as little as 10 to 12 minutes for those exercises, which then gets the cardiovascular benefit. Has anyone here ever pushed themselves and not had their heart rate go up? And not started breathing hard? So it's not about, I want to do it my way. It's, do you really want the result? You need to really draw this line. Do I want the result? Would it be better to stress a little bit and push a little bit and be done in 20 minutes? And allow your body to recover more? Or should you do more stress with exercise and have less time to recover? Now, understand that there are glycolytic type tissue people that are more power, and there are those people that are more oxidative or more endurance. It has been found through testing that most oxidative people who are more endurance type athletes cannot train as far toward glycolytic or power as the power athlete seems to be able to train farther into the endurance field. Because there again, what does that say? Strength is the greater factor. The man who has the leverage factor, the neurological factor, and the tissue type for strength has the ability. I want you to hear an old-time saying, only the strong survive. And strength comes from inner man. It comes from inner man thinking logically, not with emotion and ego. It comes from the stronger man mentally, who can bring that physical body under subjection through the right type of training. And it takes the stronger man who gets to the higher level, like the animals on the mountain, of food. He gets to the higher level of the food chain. This food chain thing is right there for an example for us. So if you'll eat more food, your body will rest better. And if you eat better food, and you work out a little harder and a little briefer. Now let me give you an example. Let's look at the lion and the big predators. They work very, very hard, very, very briefly, or they die because they don't have food. But then they lay around and they eat and they rest and they recover, and they're very powerful, more powerful pound for pound than other types of animals. And then you've got the gazelles, and you've got the prey food that are more vegan, that are more repetitious work. They constantly are on the go, constantly are on the move, looking, being careful. But the predator predates. He's the stronger animal, pound for pound. And just as a simple observation people would like to use, and I normally don't like to use this, but predators usually have their eyes in the front of their head. Prey animals usually have them on the side. Man has his eyes on the front of his head. Protein is definitely one of the things we need. It's the most underrated food in most cases, and energy foods are most overrated. But repair is the primary consideration. So I hope that you walk away from here tonight with a couple of things like, I'm going to work out harder so I can work out briefer. I'm going to feed my body so that it can repair, so that it can respond. Are there any questions?
Well, I'd asked you earlier if it was true for all age levels.
Is it true for all age levels? Excellent question. Yes, it is true for all age levels. Every muscle needs to be stimulated. However, when you're looking at youth, you have to look at their nutritional differences. Youth requires a higher caloric content, usually in the forms of fats, because they have the growth factor, which is called the formative years. Which, if you're trying to build a different body, aren't you in your formative years, no matter where you're trying to reform your body, okay? So if we're going to stimulate that body for change, we need to change our nutrition. Just like if you have a child that's in their formative years, you have the normal growth factor, you have the extra energy factor, now you've got the stress of exercise factor, stress of tissue factor. Are you at -4 or -5? So where do you want that child? So if you're going to let someone deal with your child, especially high school sports are the most abusive programs today. And I say this with respect to parents and to children, because most coaches only have their children for 2 years, maybe 3, and it's about their coaching record. When they are not qualified in most cases to teach this, they don't have any working knowledge, most people don't, let alone they have some theory. But they're more taught for teaching driver's ed and health than they are how to facilitate the change in your child's formative years, and then add the stress of exercise, which becomes more important. And there's a simple test that can be done for that. Those of you who will contact me, I will give you these formulas to check your children so that you can see if the coach knows what he's doing or not. But yes, you see that I have a young lady in here, 10 years old. You see her getting stronger. Have you noticed it at all? She is phenomenally increasing. But this little girl actually keeps a diet log. Her parents actually keep a diet log. I won't work with her without a diet log. Do no harm first. First of all, if we're going to deal with health, when I got into this, people asked me, Bert, would you help me? Why would you want me to help you? Well, they go, well, we see what you've done with yourself since you've come back from non. It's amazing what you've done for yourself. I took that as a big honor, and I took it as an awesome responsibility. To me, that struck me so hard in the heart that if I was going to help someone, that the first thing I had to consider was, oh my goodness, what if I do something wrong? So I always went about it as if I were doing it for me. And as you all know, anyone who doesn't consider your background, your history, where you're at now, what are you eating, how are they going to help you with results? They're more about stress. So don't be a part of the fitness fraud. I'd like to see a show of hands. Anybody leaving here tonight with some information that would arm them so that nobody could get over on you again? Has it been self-evident? Hold your hand up if it's pretty self-evident. I told y'all it wasn't something that I was going to show you that was revolutionary. It's something you already know. But we've been caught up by media, we've been caught up by sales, we've been caught up by emotion and ego. No. Put it aside, look for results. See if they'll do this. Will they take your heart rate every day? Your resting heart rate, do they want to know it? How do they know if you've recovered? How about your descending heart rate or your top heart rate? How about your weight every day? How about your diet log every day? How about your pictures every 3 weeks? How about your measurements every 3 weeks? How about a body composition that's neither near infrared light or water weighing every week like we do? How about test your blood sugar 3 or 4 times a day to prove that your blood sugar is balanced? How about have a blood chemistry test to prove that it's working? People here know that it does. If they're not doing that, they're part of the fitness fraud. Don't get taken. Thank everybody for coming out. I hope you all have learned something, and if I can answer any questions in the future, pick up the phone and call me. And 2 weeks from tonight, I'll do another session, and I'll let you know what that's on if you'd like to come back. Thank you.